Yeah, so like always, appreciate you guys coming out and covering Penn State football. Going back and watching the film from this past game was kind of about what we thought and what we discussed afterwards. I think you guys have already seen players of the game and all those types of things. So I'm going to move on to our next opponent, which is obviously Illinois. And Brett Bielema, who I know very well, was on the Nike trip with him for a long time. He's done a really nice job. Obviously, he's got a ton of history as a head coach. He's been around some really good coaches and some really good programs. Did a great job when he was at Wisconsin. Is doing a great job now at Illinois. Had some time in the NFL as well. So it's going to be a heck of a game. Obviously, their road win on the road at Nebraska was a really big win for them. So they're coming in here confident, but they're also coming in here already going on the road and finding success in a tough environment. Nebraska is a storied program. They take a lot of pride in their stadium and their game day environment as well. So I think that'll give Illinois a ton of confidence coming into our place. When you talk about their offensive coordinator, Barry Looney, who I think is doing a really nice job for them, kind of a combination of his background and Brent's background in terms of what they want to do and what he wants to do. It's a really nice mix kind of the two systems. And they're putting up some really good numbers. I think the biggest difference, right, is the quarterback. I think he's got 10 touchdown passes and 0 interceptions. I think he's one of the more improved players right now in college football. So I think that's kind of the big story. Young man that transferred, I think, from Mississippi State, if I remember correctly. The running back, number 3, Fegan. He is a thumper. He's 250 pounds. And then they've had really good production out of wide receiver number 13, Bryant, and wide receiver number 4, Franklin. Guys have been very, very productive for them. So doing a nice job. They do a really good job, again, mixing up personnels, mixing up scheme, mixing up tempo. I think the offensive coordinator's background is tempo. I think if you look at Brett's background, it's more about runs plus completions and being able to run the ball and being physical. So they've blended the two, I think, very nicely. And then defensively, I think Aaron Henry's done a really nice job as a guy that they promoted. When obviously their defense coordinator left to go be the head coach at Purdue. And Aaron's done a nice job. Obviously, Brett's got a defensive background as well, but they're really playing well and has done a nice job. He's a defensive back coach by trade, but is doing some really nice things. Their defensive end, number 17, Gabe Akis, is doing a really nice job. He's a young man. He's been playing for him, I think, since his true freshman year. Kid out of Florida. Their linebacker, number 28, Rosique, is a captain for them. Again, another Florida guy. He's playing well. And their cornerback and nickel, number 14, Xavier Scott, another Florida guy. And then their safety, number 10, Miles Scott. I think their secondary is really going to be a challenge for us. I think our wide receivers have taken a really nice step and made some really good strides since last season. But we will be challenged. We will be challenged in the secondary this week. These guys do a really good job. They play a decent amount of man coverage, and they're extremely competitive. And then from a special teams perspective, Robbie Dishler is their special teams coordinator and has done a good job. We've been impressed with punt returner number 80, Hank Beatty, and then their kick returner number 7, Canary. So should be a good challenge. Don't really have any changes for you guys in terms of the red, yellow, green list. Obviously don't have any significant changes on the depth chart. And I open up to questions.
We'll start with Rich Garcella.
Good
Good afternoon, James. How are you?
Good, Rich. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. James, we saw Cam Wallace and Dom DeLuca leave the game with injuries. Can you give us an update on them? Is either one of them long term?
Yeah, again, I understand you guys are going to ask these questions. I typically don't have these answers for you. I hate to see you waste a question, but I typically don't have these answers for you guys in this press conference because, once again, we need time to evaluate the injuries, and we need time to have conversations with these kids and their families before I'm going to say something to you guys about it. So I would recommend for you guys to probably save these type of questions till Tuesday. But if you guys want to ask, feel free to ask. But I typically won't have this information for you guys on a Monday again because we need to totally evaluate the injuries. And sometimes you're talking about MRIs and X-rays and a ton of things that go into that, and then also me to be able to have the time to have conversations with them and possibly their families.
Let's go to Mike Gross and then Frank Bodani. You're on deck.
Good afternoon, James. How are you?
Good, Mike. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Next year, as I understand it, there's been a rules change where you're going to go to 105 roster limit, and all of those guys can be on scholarship, which logically, and I think a lot of people have said, could mean the end or the diminishing of walk-ons. So I guess, what's your opinion of that rule? What have you done to manage that in terms of talking to the kids in your program who are, preferred walk-ons? What's your sort of take on that situation?
Well, a couple things. Probably not going to get into detail with strategy on that. In terms of conversations, those conversations we'll have after the season. I don't think that's a conversation for right now. The other thing that I would say to you is the rule, the way I understand it, is for the season. So that doesn't mean in training camp and in spring ball, your numbers have to be at 105. So in some ways, you're going to create a system where you're going to have almost like tryouts and cuts, like you've had, in high school and like you've had a little bit maybe in some colleges. Guys fighting to get onto the active roster, the 105. But it will limit some opportunities. There's no doubt about it. And we've had some great stories over my time here at Penn State and really over Penn State's history. There's been some tremendous stories. I don't think there's too many coaches that love it. You look at some of these programs. I don't mean to talk about other schools, but like you look at programs like Nebraska and others that have a really robust history with walk-ons. This creates challenges. So it creates a lot of challenges for all of us, and some programs more than others. And it reduces opportunities, which you hate to see. I think it's going to help FCS programs. I think it's going to help Division II football. But it's going to hurt opportunities for the kid that wanted to come to Penn State and chase his dream and see if he could possibly, earn a role or even possibly earn a scholarship. So I don't love it, but like most things, this all deals with finances and budgets.
Let's go to Frank Bodani and then Mark Wogenrich. You're on deck.
Hi, James. Good afternoon to you.
You as well, Frank.
Thank you. So 3 games in, is there a point or two about your defense you still really most want to learn about? Is there 1 or 2 areas that to you still has some proving to go here going into this game?
Well, before I get into specifically answering your question, I think the Bowling Green game had some people concerned, right? And then Bowling Green goes to Texas A&M and has a similar type game at Texas A&M. So I think Bowling Green's a really good MAC team. So I think that was helpful for me as well as probably others. But defensively, I thought last week, again, when you hold any Division I football team to 67 yards and you say it's the 8th lowest in Penn State history, I think the previous one may have been, or maybe that was the yards differential, was like against Susquehanna, which I don't, if I scheduled Susquehanna, I could imagine the comments I would get from you guys and the questions I would get in the press conference, especially from Mike. But I think whenever you hold anybody to 67 yards, that's hard to do. It really is. So I thought we took some significant strides last week. It's something for us to build on. But obviously, as we all know, when you get into Big Ten play, it's different. And Illinois has done a really good job. They're a physical bunch. The quarterback's playing at a high level. And as you guys know, we've lost some significant players and has tested our depth. So we're going to have to continue to develop depth. I'm thankful for the 7:30 game. I know that sounds silly, but with some of the young guys that we're playing, we need every minute we can in preparation, and we're going to take advantage of every minute in terms of walkthroughs and meetings. So last week was a nice step. Again, I thought we played really good in week 1. I thought as a team we didn't play as well in week 2, but I have probably better perspective on that now than I did after the game. And then, last week I thought we played well. So we're taking a step in the right direction, but we got to get better this week as a defense, as an offense, as a team, on special teams, all of it. And I think our guys, looking at Sunday's practice, I think our guys are approaching it the right way.
Let's go to Mark Wogenrich and then Johnny McGonigal. You're on deck.
Hey, James, how are you?
Good, Mark. How are you?
Good, thanks. Through 3 games, how would you assess the offensive line, particularly maybe some of the things that Andy Kotelnicki seems to be asking some of the guys to do with, like, the motions and stuff like that?
Yeah.
Or those guys moving, the offensive linemen, moving around. And
Yeah, I think we've been pleased with how the O-line is playing. I think they're playing physical. Again, when you're able to rush the ball for 300 yards and you're able to protect the quarterback. Drew's done a couple nice things in terms of extending plays, and his mobility I think has been really big for us. I think last year he probably ran better than people thought he would, and I think he's taken it to another level this year, not necessarily just purely running, but getting a couple first downs a game with his feet or just keeping plays alive, like excuse me, the long play down the sideline that he threw to Omari that he extended the play. So I've been pleased with the O-line. Excuse me. In terms of like the one motion we ran with Venga, I don't know if that's going to skew grades or perception, or them shifting pre-snap. I don't really think that is going to have an overall impact on how the O-line plays and their grades. But it's fun. It's cool to see and it's cool to look at. But where I think it helps you is it just, again, like we've talked about before, it creates time that the defense has to spend working on it. Obviously, they've been looking at Kansas film. They've been looking at Penn State film from last year. They're looking at Penn State film now from this year. And whenever you're able to put some different things on tape that they have to deal with, whether it's motions or shifts or some of the things you brought up, it does 2 things. It forces them to spend time on it, and then obviously for us, it also creates some opportunities to take advantage of leverage and angles and grass.
Let's go to Johnny McGonigal.